Welcome to today's webinar. Super happy to have y'all join us as we talk about how you can make sure you're getting paid if you're doing restoration work following the winter storm down there in Texas. So if you're here today, you know there's been significant water damage from burst pipes on properties all across the state. So I actually came across this article the other day that talked about how insurance companies expect the number of water damage claims in Texas alone to exceed the total number of water damage claims handled nationwide throughout previous years. So pretty crazy stuff. And it's been a tough time for property owners down there in Texas, and y'all's services are very much needed. You're going to make a big difference here. So whether you're a restoration contractor, a plumber, or just a contractor taking on some recovery work for the first time, the point of our webinar today is to make sure you're getting paid for the work that you do. So before moving forward, just want to say that we are recording this session live. So you'll receive a link to the recording tomorrow if you want to watch it again or share it with your team. And if you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and enter them in the chat box on the right of your screen. Okay. So just quick introductions here. My name is Danny Stagliano, and I am a senior payment expert here at Levelset. I work to help businesses like yours get paid faster and without payment problems. With me is my less handsome colleague, Liam Duddy, and he's also a senior payment expert at Levelset. And then, of course, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Klark Brown. So Liam's going to be leading a Q&A with Klark. And if you somehow don't know who Klark is, he is the co-founder of the Alliance of Independent Restorers. So just an expert in the disaster recovery and restoration industry since the early 2000s. And he has a ton of great insights to share about getting paid and protecting your business when doing recovery work. So before I kick things over to Liam and Klark, I'll just briefly talk about Levelset and how we help contractors get paid. So, we all know that the construction industry presents all sorts of challenges when it comes to getting paid. So what our software here at Levelset does is it helps you track those mechanics, lien, and notice deadlines, verify job site information, and just make the paperwork process of lien rights management super easy. So on top of that, we also have a bunch of free resources from contract review profiles to educational guides on our website. So now I'll turn it over to Liam and Klark.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate that, Danny, and appreciate the less handsome comment too. That's nice. Well, yeah, awesome. Thanks, Danny, for kicking us off here. So yeah, let's jump into question answers with our special guest, Klark. Klark, can you tell us a little, let's just start off. Tell us a little bit more about what you do. Give us some background about how you got into the restoration industry, maybe restoration advisors and AIR. Could you start off with that, please?
Yeah, love to. Thanks for having me on. I love doing, this is, I think, my third or fourth webinar on different topics for Levelset. I love what you do for contractors, and I get so many follow-up conversations and calls about what you do. So it's a much needed. But yeah, so I'm originally from Texas that we're going to be talking about today. I currently live in Richmond, Virginia. Grew up in a whole different industry, but still a service industry, and it was kind of became related to some of the restoration disaster work. I was a subcontractor in what I did, and I joined the industry, as Danny said, 2002 with a really, really stellar company out of Texas. And we only did commercial and natural disasters across the country. So I worked with them and one other company for quite a long time, had some incredible mentors, got a great education by fire, hard knocks, the whole bit. Traveled the country, traveled the world, 11 other countries doing disasters and tsunamis and whatnot. And started my own company for a couple of years and built that up and sold it. I wouldn't quite say I'm a serial entrepreneur, but I probably fall into that category. But I found the love for teaching and coaching. I've always been the person people came to for advice or coaching. It's just, and I'm real relational. I'm not a transactional person. I look at everything relational and not transactional. So I formed a Restoration Advisors in around 2016, 2017. I'm a business coach and a mentor and a consultant, kind of all those things. one, real small firm. It's just myself and another person. We only have a stable of a few clients at a time right now. But I'm pro contractor. I love helping the end user, but my best needs and services are to help a contractor, number one, stay in business and be profitable, and then follow a path of growth of how to help more people. And then being so pro contractor, we saw such a need in our industry and every industry is the same way. There's good actors and bad actors. Well, we found out that good contractors like to be surrounded by other good contractors. Like, where are people like us? So we started the Alliance of Independent Restorers, which is a trade association a little bit, and just a community mastermind, if you will. But it's also giving a lot of, we're taking away the learning curve for newer contractors on how do I go from where I am to where I want to be without spending a lot of money, without making a lot of mistakes, and taking an ungodly amount of time. And so we just try to mentor people. And then those of us that have been in the industry a lot longer, we get to continue to stay atop of things like Levelset with new technology that wasn't around when we were here before. So it's just a great ecosystem that I get fortunate to play in and meet thousands of contractors all the time, which is what I love to do.
Thanks for sharing that. And it has been a pleasure working with you past couple of years, Klark, and developing this relationship with AIR and your members. It's really is something I love working with. I've developed a love for restoration work and restoration contractors through you, and it's been an ultimate pleasure. And we are thankful for you to be here today. Leading into, I do want to start off with just Texas storm recovery work. So I see on Facebook, Klark, you've been flying back and forth, hitting up Dallas, going down to Houston, all over the whole entire state, from Virginia back to Dallas, I think the past couple weeks. What is the most important thing that you've learned from those jobs that you could think of on the top of your head?
The most important thing that I've learned, well, the most important thing is we've never seen anything quite like this. It's deceiving. It's deceptively a major event. You mentioned Austin, Houston, Dallas were the three main places I went. Driving down the road, driving down 35 or any road there, you don't see anything affected. This is not a storm. This is not a hurricane. It's not a hailstorm. This is inside of structures. So a lot of people have undervalued what the size of this is. And what Danny was talking about, some of those figures are absolutely things I've heard, and I completely agree with and believe. So I think that a lot of people were caught, the resources, the services that we need, the supply chain demand was really, really a big challenge in the beginning because no one ramped up for this. And then another interesting thing is there are way more claims than there are adjusters right now, which are going to make this insurance part very interesting, especially on the emergency services, the early part where just no one's going to get to the job. There's going to be a lot of questions about your documentation a month from now. So for those reasons, it's been very, very interesting.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that last point that you made about the sheer number of just adjusters. I'm just curious, just on top of my head, I'm thinking payment issues right there, slow payment, dragging their feet. Have you seen that similar, just contractors still having to maybe pull teeth or, really have a process to where they're reaching out to the necessary people to try to make sure that they're getting paid on time? Have you seen that pose issues when there's less adjusters or people available to get that processed?
Yes and no. Some of it varies depending on the carrier. Some carriers are much better and have much better practices and are much more customer centric than others. We probably have heard that a million times. There's also a true, the carriers know from a retention standpoint, if this were just in Dallas only, they have enough independent adjusters that they could swarm thousands of adjusters and handle that stuff. But because it's so many, they are being I dare to say a little more liberal, but at least a little more forgiving by getting some funding over to some people, because these floods in these homes from freezing pipes, a lot of times they were pretty substantial because they had no power for a week. It affected the entire, maybe the first floor or the whole house. There's a lot of situations where people are having to move out. So that gets into what's called ALE, allowed living expenses. They need money to move into temporary housing. get their goods, the emergency things they need right away, cleaned and moved. So I've been very impressed and pleased with some of the response from the carriers. And then there's others that are just saying, we won't get anybody out there for 2 months. Do what you have to do. And there's no direction, which causes the insured, the homeowner or business owner, a little paralysis analysis, a little afraid to go forward without some direction or at least some affirmation of coverage. And so that's where I've just been telling everybody, just have them say, is this loss covered? Yes or no? Because you have an automatic duty to mitigate in your policy. You have to mitigate to keep it from getting worse, or then you start seeing some denial issues.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad to hear the compassion of people overall in the state has really transcended all the way from the carrier down to the
don't mess with Texas, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's been great. And funny you say that. I know 3 people on top of my head that had to move where they're living now and go somewhere else because were in an apartment or their house pipe broke. So it is just rampant. So I'm glad to hear that compassion is all over.
Yeah.
Going into that, this is a piggyback off the last question, but obviously a lot of people are coming into Texas and they're traveling here to do this restoration work. A lot of restoration companies from all over. I know people from Indiana, my home state, that have came down. And I know a lot of members as well that have probably been doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
People that are traveling into a new state or maybe doing Texas or not Texas, storm recovery work for the first time, what is some advice that you'd give them about getting paid on these type of jobs?
Well, first off, contracts and understanding what every state as many things that we may be alike in contracting world, every state, including Texas, has some very specific guidelines that you must follow when contracting on a relationship like you're entering. So understanding what those are and making sure your contract will cover your butt to do this work. We have an overwhelming amount of empathy. You just mentioned that on the previous thing. The compassion fogs over sometimes the logic and forgetting that we're a business and not just people doing a compassionate thing. It's a real tough balance for some people. But I brought I encouraged a lot of members of AIR and even any contractor. If you have capacity to come down here and do this kind of work, this state needs you. These people need you. This is a time for you to put all your training to use. But make sure your ducks are in a row. Make sure you especially, we're talking about water damage. We're not even talking about mold remediation yet, but we're talking about straight up water mitigation. Make sure your insurance covers you outside of the state you're in. So I would say on the front side of that, and then just best practices. I'm the first one, Liam, that tells everyone, I know we are dealing with an insurance company involved, but if you treat every job like insurance isn't related and be consistent and say, this is how I work, I cannot finance for 6 months your remediation. I'm going to have to get paid. This is how I get paid back home. It's the way I'm going to do it here. And if a customer cannot agree to those terms, it's not the customer for you. So that whole thing, FOMO, comes in, fear of missing out. I'm going to get down there and gobble up as much revenue as I can. It doesn't mean anything if you can't collect on it. So I would just say, pump the brakes. The fire's out. Now just slide into really good, smart business and use that to help people with.
And that's my dog barking. I appreciate that, by the way. And if you heard my dog howling, he liked what you had to say, Clark. I appreciate that. That actually led into my next point. You can actually see him here. We're all working from home now. It'd be nice to be in an office to run these so I could leave the dog at home. But he's been my roommate here for working from home. But yeah, Clark, going back into that, I appreciate you sharing that with me. That actually led to my next point, about working with homeowners. They're in a crisis situation or they're in a post-crisis like we have a Texas storm. Conversations with the property owners about payment, oftentimes it could be stressful. They're in a stressful situation. It can be a stressful occurrence or post some issues, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Texas, general contractors, in terms of lien rights, they're not required to send out what we call preliminary notices, just a general notice setting expectations. But when you can send them, that's exactly what you can do. You can set those expectations and onboard your customer in a respectful manner and show them you're serious about protecting your lien rights. Right. So Clark, can you talk about just the benefits? I know I already touched on those a little bit, but just the benefits of having maybe an onboarding process, including preliminary notices, and how that might help with those conversations?
Oh, of course. This is a very, you and I have talked about this many times. I think it's beyond the technical experience that you get to do the work that we do. Onboarding and being able to understand a customer in this situation paves the way for success later on. So the better you are at it, we both know people that are extremely good at it. And that's it. Onboarding properly, setting expectation is just leading you to the one thing that's going to make you or break you, and that's trust. If the customer trusts you, which might be through you sound competent, you seem to have some processes, your uniforms look great, you have the right tools, you're not showing up with a hammer, you're showing up with an infrared camera, you have 500 online 5-star reviews, that all is coming together as one recipe of success. But those that don't do well in that area and just say your insurance is going to cover it all, that's the worst thing to say. It might be true, but I'm not going to speak to I'm not going to set the expectation to where I've said something is I don't deal in absolutes, but I will tell you that we're going to do work and we're going to document what we do so efficiently and proficiently that there won't be an argument that we followed best practices which fit into what this template that the carriers like, so that you can have an incredible chance of being fully reimbursed. Those kinds of things. But onboarding is, we can't help more people if we go broke. So we're going to pick up our equipment and we're going to finish on the last day. This is what the next 1 to 2 weeks are going to look like. And I want you to be on board with me as we go through that. I'm not doing it adversarially. We're in a contract here, and I want to close it out on as good a note as when I showed up and you were happy to see me. I want to leave with you happy to see me. And we're going to need to work together. We're going to need to make it real clear to the carrier what we're doing. So that whole thing is something that I travel the country teaching on. And when you get it, and when you have people in your team that really do it well, things change. You get paid quicker. You get great reviews. You get, customers that refer you future jobs. They don't when you're like, man, that whole thing went so sideways. Because unfortunately, if you aren't onboarding, the carriers are going to, whatever it is they're going to say, well, your contractor is just kind of a thief because he's trying to get you to pay for work that I don't approve. Those kinds of conversations, and they do happen, you're allowing that wedge to get put in there if you don't have the first opportunity to kind of build that bond. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, no, definitely. That it touches on the whole aspect of onboarding customers and what Levelset can help with as well. And I know that you've been a big advocate of just onboarding the customers, not of Levelset, but on Levelset as well, but just also onboarding the customers in a way that's respectful to the relationship and is showing them that you're also serious about getting paid. Actually, I use this phrase a lot, and I stole it from you, Clark. I don't know if you took it from someone else, but I love it. The last webinar we ran, you used the phrase fair and firm. And I love that. And I've been continuously saying that as well, being fair, but also firm that you are a business and you need to get paid. So
and I think anyone that uses Levelset or even understands the lean process, you owe it to your customer, because that lean word, well, someone that doesn't know what it is, they probably can Google it and it looks real scary. So you have to have the acumen and the vernacular to kind of break it down to the terms that they understand, saying it's the last thing we want to do. It doesn't hit your credit. All the things, it's not the end of the world. It can be taken off. All we need it for is leverage to make sure we don't get stuck holding this and your carrier doesn't indemnify you or you get the money some other way. But having a good language about that. But yeah, being fair but firm, saying, we hope we don't get to that point, but we will if we have to.
Yeah.
I think I probably stole that from somebody.
I loved it. I've been using it ever since. I've been saying that, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned something also to me actually the other day when we were talking on the phone, Clark. You mentioned about most of these pipes bursting in Texas. It was covered because it was the insurance was covered because it was a pipe bursting.
Mm-hmm.
What about when the property damage isn't covered by insurance? Mm-hmm. What should contractors be on the lookout for when it comes to collecting payment?
I'm about to sneeze, so if I push my head away, it's gonna be because I'm about to sneeze. I coach every client, even if they're not a client, every service industry professional, adopt the idea of financing. Get a financing company, make that easier, give your customer options. But if it's self-pay, they already have a perception of what you cost. So that's where your sales come into place, not sales like buy from me, but let me show you the value and why things cost what they cost. If I tell someone that your water mitigation services are going to be $14,000, they're like, holy wow, why would it cost that? Why did a couple of fans and a dehumidifier, how would that come out? You need to be able to say, but because there's a lot of things that go into place here. We've got to use the right equipment. We've got our guys can't be just guys off the parking lot of Home Depot. We've got to have trained people to not break your stuff, to not steal from you. And anyway, you've just got to be really, really good at that. But having financing for people, I will tell you in Texas right now, it's incredible how many homes there have these high deductibles, 1% to 2% of the home value. Now, parts of Dallas that froze, there's some houses that are $500,000. 2% of a $500,000 house is $10,000. That would be out of pocket for someone. And not a lot of people have, even people have $500,000 house don't have 10,000 sitting around. Having some options with financing is one of those ways that I recommend doing it. But, and that's a third party company. I wouldn't do it in-house. I wouldn't mess with that kind of accounting for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another thing too, we've kind of been touching on it, how to maintain these positive relationships with our customers, onboarding, like you mentioned, Clark, being fair but firm, offering financing, another tool in the wheelhouse. Do you have any other tips that can help contractors maintain positive relationships with their customers during these storm recovery jobs?
Yeah, even during the storm recovery jobs, or even
in general. Yeah.
In general. The onboarding doesn't stop the night or the day that you meet the customer. You need to have a culture of, if not you, someone is in constant or relatively reasonable contact with the customer, updating them. You may have told them the timeline of how things are going to go, but you also told them in a minute where their adrenaline was way up here and they didn't hear that. So you have got to keep nurturing and reminding through and say, hey, we're at the point. Remember, we said that our reconstruction team is going to come in. We're going to do some measurements and we're going to start putting together this, or I've got the electrician coming today. Just removing the surprises for the customer, because at this point you've told them, I'm going to take care of this for you. Well, you got to actually do that, because again, that trust goes out the window on day 3. This is nothing like you sold me that first day, but man, since then I haven't seen you. Where that's a challenge is in Texas right now. If you came in from Indiana, go Colts, you might be handling 12, 15, 20 projects, which is probably more than your capacity, but it's taking the most important people that normally would nurture relationships out of the equation and putting them into a production role. And the customers are just like, I haven't heard anything. What's next? And then they're calling you, they're having to bug you for information. Maybe their insurance company is saying, hey, I don't have this yet, that transaction. But if you get in front of that and do what you said you would do, saying the expectation is we're going to over communicate until you tell us to shut up. And then, I even ask customers, do you like email best? Do you like text? Do you want Facebook Messenger, Snapchat? How do you converse? Because I want to meet you where you are. And again, that's building trust. And they're like, man, you're exactly what we needed in this situation. Then after that, I hate to say it, the customer's kind of in your hands until you screw up. But just continuing conversation, just having a really good, being a customer-centric company like Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Just all the way till they're paid and they're rolling out the door. Then they're going to come back and see you again, or tell somebody else to come see you again.
Funny you said that. I know Tyler Stoner. He told me about his Chick-fil-A restoration idea or approach to treating his customers. Shout out if he's ever going to watch this. Cool guy. But no, Clark, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing all your knowledge and answering all these questions. I didn't have too many more questions really in general about the Texas storm recovery work. Do you have any parting advice or any other resources that you would recommend to contractors doing restoration work? Something that maybe we didn't touch on. We have plenty of time here. So
absolutely. I would like to really come back to what's my passion. Restoration Advisors is my firm. Not everyone is in a position to hire a coach, but what you are in a position to do is check us out at the Alliance of Independent Restorers. Go to airestore.org. I think when we post this, we'll probably put this in some notes. I will tell you, whether it be people going to Texas or went to Sandy in Louisiana or Florida or wherever you go, if you will put yourself in a tribe of other restorers, other people like you, and I'm talking about good quality people that you trust, the thing that when you stumble and struggle, you've got somebody there to help you out. I can tell you in Texas, the referrals were going back and forth. Hey, I've got as much work as I can get to for the next 3 days. I have this whole apartment complex, or I have this commercial building that they want someone good, and I want you to go get it. So that type of internal stuff, or I don't have enough equipment, or I'm short on people today, or chemicals, or that job is, anybody that knows Dallas or Houston, you can be on two sides of towns, and that could be a 2-hour drive. Hey, can you stop over this job? And I'm going to tell the customer that one of my partners is coming. But I would just say, don't look at your competition as competition. Find a way to align with people and be something bigger than yourself. And your customer will be like, I like that you view things that way. Don't talk bad about the guys in green or guys in yellow or red. Don't talk bad about the franchises or your competition. Just don't say anything at all if you have to. But I would tell you that people that have partnerships with others that do what they do usually can expand their capacity quite a bit and usually benefit from that as well. And as well as learning, they get opportunities to go see jobs they don't. But so that's what AIR, why am I saying that? Because AIR, we cultivate that. We have chapters, we have national and regional events that we bring people together. We continue to contribute to that mindset that if you just meet some others, and I will say, since we mentioned franchises, Liam and Danny, franchises, and I am completely about franchises as well, but what they have a habit of is staying stuck inside of the circle of their franchise and hearing the same thing. Pull out of that and put yourself into some other places where people are doing things different. And you'll be amazed about, wow, this is a whole new field. This is a whole new pasture. There's an app. Here's a program, Levelset, we've never heard of, because maybe my franchise doesn't talk about it, but they should. They bring it back to their franchise and say, holy cow. So I just tell people to kind of step out, be contributors into their industry, be involved and stuff like that. But that's one of the biggest things that we built AIR for, because we found that most people want to do that. They just don't know how. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that we're a little bit of a conduit for that. And we have masterminds, we have mentorship groups where someone's brand new in the industry and we team them up with someone that's been in it 15 years. And that's a $1 million education. If anybody's ever been in business, if I can flatten that curve of learning, that's worth way more than whatever the dues would be for joining AIR. And then you start bringing your team in. We've got online learning, some training courses and stuff like that. So a lot of benefits, but that would be one thing I would say, that, and just get involved with that.
Yeah, I'll second that. I've seen it myself. People coming together. I went up to Dallas and I met a bunch of AIR members. There was people from Service Masters, Serve Pros, just starting out, people helping each other, giving each other leads, equipment, knowledge. And I saw it firsthand. So I know you are doing that, and it is really something special. And again, just to say again, we are thankful for the partnership with AIR and its members, and appreciate your time here again today. Sure. And I appreciate all those, again, answering all those questions as well. You're always a wealth of knowledge. Our second section, or second to last section, what I want to do, I want to give you a quick overview about how Levelset helps with getting paid. We already touched on the payment process, onboarding your customer, setting those expectations, but I want you all to see how easy it is to file these notices or send these notices and track your cash flow using Levelset. So Clark, I'm not sure if it's been a while if you jumped into the program, but
it's been a while. I'll talk about it all the time, but you guys are you're such innovators of everything. Great.
Well, it's a big team back, behind everything here that really works hard to make sure we're meeting the needs of our customers. So I want to show y'all the program, everyone here that's attending, just quickly, just a quick overview. This isn't here to be a full demo. I'm not going to click through every node and show you every notice, but I want you to see just jobs here. This is where all your projects are going to be located, your universal site of all your projects. You can see specific notices. So if you were in a state where a preliminary notice was required, say California, for example, you'll see that that's due in 2 weeks. Another example, you'll see an Austin job here I actually created for this. You'll see that lien is due in 3 months. Getting notified on those deadlines weekly, or some sort of variation, maybe it's 5 days before the deadline, whatever it may be, those notifications will keep you up to date with your lien deadlines and make sure that you are being proactive and protecting yourself. Another thing, if you were to actually click on one of these projects, it's going to take you into the project page. We can ultimately take this information from your accounting software so you don't have to enter any data. And then from here, it's really easy to send out notices. Say you want to create a notice just to set expectations. You can go here, create notice, and we can send something out. These notices are ultimately, you're able to customize them, add the language that you want to include on them. Should load up here soon. I'll just show you the first cover letter. And this could get sent out right on the start of the job, about you, about your company, who you were hired by, any other stakeholders. And then, a last page, maybe talking about the onboarding process or talking about your expectations to payment. So let me get out of here.
While you're doing that, Liam, I want to tell everybody, the thing I get from the most from people is, aren't my customers going to get angry because I'm using liens? And I'm like, again, it goes back to onboarding, but no, not once you tell them what it actually, why you're doing it. And I can tell you that from a getting paid standpoint, you and I both know several people that say this. There's one person that gets paid an average of 18 days because claims go in 2 different piles. Those that have been notified that lien processes will be followed, and those that don't. And believe me, there's a pile that goes a lot quicker than the other one. So don't be afraid. I know people that they send out 300 lien notifications a year, but have never put a lien on a building because they're paid well before that. And you can advertise that. So
yeah, I was gonna actually ask that, Clark. A lot of people think, and what you're talking about is that notice of intent.
Yeah.
A lot of people think are maybe scared to send this, but like what you said, Clark, if you set those expectations in the beginning and say, no, this is a tool for you and me to go to and make sure it prompts insurance to take action and pay us,
right.
pay so you can pay me. Not a tool to place any pressure on the homeowner, but more sort of a tool for them to motivate and get insurance to have that payment coming in sooner. So that's that document Clark's talking about, that notice of intent to file a lien. And ultimately, we're going to be able to send all these out for your business. That was just a quick overview. I just wanted to show people here that maybe aren't too familiar. And then I think that was the last point on my end. Danny, if you want to wrap us up here.
I'd love some questions if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we do have some time for anyone in the audience to ask questions. So should be a little Q&A button on the bottom right there. So if anybody wants to throw something in there, you can get Klark up close and personal answer.
I'll also tell you the reason that I've always been attracted to Levelset is because it's just me or anyone in a business that's growing. You're usually wearing 42 different hats or 43, trying to remember these days and trying to make sure it's on your calendar and everyone else sees it and you get busy. I can't tell you how many people have missed their opportunities on jobs to not file a lien or to send no intent. So this just handles it and literally one job can pay for the annual cost of this. Getting one job collected quicker will actually cover it. So I certainly want people to put it into that perspective instead of that question always is how much does it cost, is how much does it cost if I don't do it? That's always what I usually do the boomerang on that question with.
We have opening positions. No, I'm just kidding.
You have so many, I want to tell you, you guys give, I'll follow you on LinkedIn and you're so prolific with your educational based webinars like this on so many different topics that I would know you, attorneys, engineers, accounting is you every week. It seems like you've got a webinar with an expert or a guru at something. And I just hope if nothing else, until someone's ready, they'll at least be on LinkedIn or Facebook and subscribe, because I've watched most of those and I've learned something every single one. But a lot of people will do that for a season, but you guys are just prolific all the time doing that.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We are, it's a motto at Levelset, or I guess within the sales team, and maybe this is internal, but it's help first, sell second. We want to extend a helping hand first, really help the customer, do whatever we can to help them first and foremost. And then if they, want to pay for our services, great. But we do offer a lot of those free resources. And I'm thankful for you to be the guru here today on the webinar. Do we have any Q&As? Anybody want to, me, Danny, or anybody? We must have touched on everything, Clark. You're too thorough.
Yeah. Texas still needs a lot of help. If no one's asking questions, I'd like to throw something out real quick that I told you guys I would like to bring up. Texas is a state that's regulated for mold. So water damage is one thing. Those all started, it quickly turns, especially the warmer the climate got up to 75 degrees. Water turns into mold really, really quickly. And there were so many cases and so many claims that they were running up for contractors. So we are getting into mold. And the real concern amongst all of us was, what happens in a state that you have to be licensed to do it is going to happen to all these projects. Well, just this week, the TDLR, the Texas Department of Resources, has they govern that process. They've lifted the need to be licensed. And now they just ask for anyone in state or out of state that's not licensed to register and have some acumen and some training and certification in mold to allow more people to be able to do that. So, and Texas has always required an assessment for the mold first, which means a particularly trained hygienist needs to come in and do testing. That's been lifted just from a state of emergency, trying to get these things into a healthier standpoint. So if you are experienced at mold remediation, which is a much more scheduled, methodical, planned out process, it's not urgent and it's not super fast, Texas still needs you, because there are hundreds of thousands of homes that need it to some degree. So team up with someone and go down, but you now have the capacity to do that, because mold, as anybody on this call, if they do mold work, you know how much it can make people sick. So I from a PSA standpoint, I wanted to point that out today.
Yeah, thank you. It's good. It's good to know. We're going to have to put some information maybe about that.
Yeah, I've got that release that I'll send over to you, and if you want to put that on your website, you could.
Yeah, that's really good information to know. I see that mold also, unfortunately, hopefully it doesn't, but do you foresee a lot of those mold issues coming up in the future, in the maybe later future, with maybe some improper places not being fully dried out, or?
Yeah, so about that. So I also want to mention that in Texas, because there was a huge mold frenzy many, many years ago, that it's not widely covered. People may not have mold coverage, and this conversation may be back towards the self-pay, find ways that people can pay for that to get done. So as far as mold becoming an issue because of improperly mitigated, no drying happened, I've told everybody that, hundreds of homeowners and business owners, because everybody was on the phone trying to call someone to come out and respond, and they couldn't or wouldn't. Document every attempt that you make. You're going to want to prove to your insurance company, this was not me sitting on my hands doing nothing. I was attempting. I called this many people. This was the time of day. I was on a list. No one ever showed up. Finally, when someone did show up, it's been 3 or 4 weeks. It's no longer just water. Now it's mold growth. I can't speak for the insurance companies, but I would say there's almost a certainty that in a court of law, that would not fall under a maintenance issue. That would just be an area-wide disaster, state of emergency issue, and it would probably be covered. And I've seen some cases for better insurance companies saying, we understand, let's now move into the mold and let's get a number together and do that. So it's certainly a concern we've got as we move along. I think there'll be a lot of attorneys, a lot of PAs for many, many years to come.
Wow, that's interesting. I know you've been a big proponent of, communication. It's also taking pictures, record keeping, making sure you have all that documentation and information as well as communication.
Always. It's just, it's not something you think about till after.
Yeah.
So if anyone here, just recommend, if any contractors are watching this, put those kinds of things on your social media and tell the public. And even not just in this case, the homeowner could do a lot to help themselves by doing a lot of documentation, keeping us accountable, taking pictures, knowing what got damaged and how much it cost and where to get it replaced, because those are all questions you're going to get asked later.
Great. Looks like we don't have any Q&As coming in. We will be sending out, or Dan, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I can wrap everything up. This was awesome, guys. Really happy to have everyone who came here as well. So as I mentioned previously, you're going to receive a recording of this webinar in an email either tomorrow or over the weekend. And I also want to mention that if you want more information about how Levelset can help you with filing liens, setting notices, and just helping you be more organized or proactive with your lien rights management approach, we're happy to provide a customized demo for you or anybody on your team. So visit the website listed on our screen. It's just levelset.com. But again, I appreciate everyone coming, and have a great rest of your week.